If you like this video and you want to see more like it, head over to Odysee. It's an awesome decentralized alternative to YouTube, and I absolutely love it. Hey everybody, it's your friend and your guy and your favorite effing idiot, Gardiner. He actually said effing, which I can appreciate that. So when I first started my channel way back in 2014, and yes, I did change the name of my channel, I felt like we were at the foot of this enormous mountain of native Linux releases that we would see over the next many years. I don't even know. But, you know, I thought like in 6 years' time, we would have an enormous catalog of native Linux games for us to look back on and be able to play. But I should have known better. I tend to be kind of an optimist. I tend to be the kind of guy who like sees the best in everything, sees the potential awesome of a lot of new and novel things. But I should have known, with my experience with installing the limited native games that we had back in 2010, that we were going to have major headaches. I mean, back in 2010, I tried to install games like Unreal Tournament 99 or even 2004, and 2004 worked pretty okay. But 1999 did not work for me at all. You might have seen that I did an installation guide of UT99, and that's only because there are some dedicated people who have done the work to maintain UT99 for Linux. The problem is native Linux games become obsolete just after a few short months of their release. If your applications aren't constantly being updated and maintained, then other things on your system, like your dependencies, are going to be updated, and it's going to eventually break your old applications. And it's not really a question of if, it's a matter of when. I mean, as I mentioned, back in 2010, I tried to play UT99, Unreal Tournament 1999, almost said 2099. And the game was completely unplayable. It was looking for old dependencies, old versions of, I think it was GTK, like GTK 1.0, and some other problems, other dependencies that the game couldn't find on the system because, hey, they were obsolete. And I was just not able to launch the game and play it. Flash forward a decade, and we have a ton of games, native Linux games on Steam for Linux. And a not insignificant number of these games just don't work anymore. Now, Valve has tried to address this with the Steam Linux runtime. And, you know, it has its issues, but they're doing a pretty good job of getting the games to work. But there are still some games that I have in my library that just won't behave properly, even with the Steam for Linux, or the Steam Linux runtime. A great example of this is Sports Friends, a game that I reviewed way back at the beginning of my channel. Sports Friends is a terrific collection of mini games, and the clear standout to me is Johann Sebastian Joust. It's a game that you play that requires PlayStation Move controllers. It's not even like a game on the screen. Everyone is like using PlayStation Move controllers. Everyone moves around the room, and you're holding your controller as still as you can while still moving around the room. And people have to try and bop your controller, make you move your controller, and then you end up getting knocked out of the game. It's not even a video game. It's just it's a game with computer elements, and it's awesome. I invested heavily in PlayStation Move controllers. I believe I have 6 of them. And Johann Sebastian Joust was actually a Linux and Mac exclusive, like for PC. You could not play this game on Windows because the Windows Bluetooth stack was not capable of talking in any way, shape, or form with the PlayStation Move controllers. But flash forward literally just 2 years after the game's release, and the Bluetooth pairing feature of the game with the PlayStation Move controllers didn't work anymore. It just would not work. And even the CLI that the game came with, the game shipped with a CLI tool set that let you pair PlayStation Move controllers with your system, that didn't work either. And that's just one example out of many where system dependencies have just moved beyond, broken compatibility with these games. And it even got to the point where it was often more stable and a more enjoyable experience to play the Windows client of the game through Proton than to actually play the Linux binary release. You see, Linux devs really aren't that sentimental of a group of people. They're not worried about breaking old applications because in the open source world, applications get maintained and get updates all the time. And it's fine when it comes to open source, when you're moving forward. And it's also fine when you have an app like Steam, which is constantly under development, getting releases every day or every other day. But for old games, that just won't do. I'm reminded of of last year when Ubuntu was like, hey, we're going to do away with 32-bit applications. And, if your system gets rid of 32-bit applications, there's not a whole lot that Valve can do. Maybe with what Valve are doing here, they might be able to achieve something, but I don't know. Truthfully, Valve has come a long way when it comes to the Steam Linux runtime. I've had some experience with older releases that didn't work last year, but with the Steam Linux runtime, they have started working again. And this is pretty awesome, but what Valve are working on now is actually more awesome. They are doing their own containerization system called Pressure Vessel, and I just love their naming scheme. I think it's so cute. So Valve have released Pressure Vessel on GitLab, and it doesn't seem like there's a license associated with their own code, but they are using libcapsule and Flatpak code, so we know that they're at least in open source territory here. Valve describes Pressure Vessel as, quote, a bit like a simplified version of Flatpak for Steam games. It is used by Steam's Steam Linux runtime compatibility tool to run games in individual game-specific containers. Now, there are many advantages for containerizing Steam games. This is important since developers will be able to run their games in environments and with dependencies that are stable and that they can test their game against on all systems. This is really cool since the Steam runtime has a few unintended side effects. One of them is that developers can accidentally build their games thinking that they're building it against the runtime when they are actually pinning against an incompatible system, a version of system libraries, and that makes the game unplayable on certain distros. Or if a runtime library is older than a system library, but the runtime version is compiled with features that the system library lacks. So if the runtime sees newer versions of libraries on the system, it won't fall back to the runtime version. And if the system version isn't compiled with certain features, then that the game won't function correctly. This could also protect your home folder against games writing crap into your home folder, which I get annoyed by. I'm pretty sure many of you get annoyed by, like, oh, you play a game and now all of a sudden you have just like 10 different folders that the game created for some reason in your home directory. But this would also ensure that when you uninstall the game, all the files that came with the game, all the files the game created after you played it, would get deleted as well. I think that's super cool. And it would also be able to guarantee that Steam Cloud would pick up on all the data that the game creates and be able to back that up for you. That's really sweet. The Steam runtime is also not capable of shipping glibc, since references to it are hard-coded in every binary. Containerizing the environment would allow developers to ship their game with their own version of glibc as a target, and thus making development easier and testing easier. And also backwards compatibility much more reliable. All right, all this sounds cool. So does this mean that Valve have come to a point where they have solved all the problems with Linux games? Not quite. This isn't actually shipping in Steam yet, and it remains to be seen if this is a tool that developers will have to implement themselves. And once Pressure Vessel ships in Steam, if it actually does, there's a little bit of a question in the README if that's going to happen or not. But if it ships in Steam eventually, you should be able to activate Pressure Vessel against any game using the Steam Linux runtime as a base, which would be cool. But I'm wondering if it will be possible to have game developers ship their game with Pressure Vessel specifically for that game. But provided all that actually works, I think that this could solve the last problem with Linux games, Linux native games, and I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. If you've been following Valve for a while in the open source side of things, you'll know that they have a GitHub account, and that Pressure Vessel is actually hosted on their GitLab account. You might be wondering what gives, as did I. Well, Gaming on Linux actually reported that this is due to the fact that Valve's GitHub are often mirrors of the internal repos that they make, and so commits and changes from the outside, from the community, actually can cause friction with the internal repos. So according to Timothy Bassett, a Valve contractor who spoke with Gaming on Linux, the projects featured on GitLab are actually going to be where Valve employees are going to be doing work out in the open with the community. That's really cool. I'm pretty excited about that. And, you know, Valve are one of the few companies who actually put their money where their mouth is when it comes to Linux and open source. And, you know, I think Valve have done more for Linux than a lot of other Linuxy companies have. So I'm pretty excited to see where this all goes. What do you think about this? Do you think that this is cool that Valve are making a containerization system for Steam? Let me know. Do you think that it's cool that Valve are doing work out in the open like this on GitLab? Hit me up in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. But you know what? I think that's going to do it for this video. If you believe in the work that I do, you can help support the show over on Patreon, or you can become a supporter of the channel here as a channel member. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys being here. You can always hit that like button if you like this video. You can share this video with your friends if you're so inclined. But whatever you do, don't forget to subscribe to see more from me. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now, and have a blessed day.